Hello YouTube, Chris Roma here, aka Roma Aquatics. I am about to do a video on TDS Creep and RO systems. And I didn't know this at first, and I probably wasted a hell of a lot of this DI resin, De-Ionization resin, because I was pumping some high TDS water through it without even knowing. So here I have a bulk reef supply, 5-stage reverse osmosis de-ionization system. It's 150 gallons per day. It has a sediment filter here, a 1 micron universal carbon block here, and another of the same here. Then it leads up into dual reverse osmosis membranes here. And from there it goes into the de-ionization resin, and then it gets pumped to wherever. So the point of this video is TDS creep, and TDS is total dissolved solids, and basically that's a measurement of everything that's dissolved in your water. So chlorine, chloramide, calcium, magnesium, copper, who knows what, I don't know, chlorophyll, probably no chlorophyll in your water, but who knows what's in there, you know what I mean? So what this does is it takes that water and it separates everything out of that, and it makes it to the point where there's nothing in it except for hydrogen and oxygen molecules, which is awesome. And then you take stuff like this remineralizer and you get the water back to however you want it. This just adds the stuff in. There's a bunch of instructions there, and you can get it back to where your shrimpies need it, or where you need it for drinking water. I also have remineralizer for drinking water. Don't mind the dirty sink. Ugh. But that's what happens when you're constantly draining RO. You can see I may have a little bit of a leak here, but we'll fix it. But the point of this video, let's get on with it, is TDS creep. What does that mean? So basically the whole point of doing all of this fancy stuff is to get water that has zero TDS. No TDS at all. So once you have zero TDS, you can remineralize your water, and you know it's exactly what you want. Even if you have like 10 TDS, it's probably most likely good and safe, even up to like 20. I mean, don't quote me on that. But you never know what that is, since it's a measurement of everything that is dissolved. You don't know if that's ammonia or nitrate or nitrite or copper. You have no idea what that could be dissolved in your water. Oh, I'm muting my phone. Sorry. I'm going to mute it right now. Give me a minute. We'll stop that. Put a stop to that. Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I have 2 meters. As you can see on my, these are TDS meters. They count the in and the out, what's coming in and what's coming out. I have 2 of them. So the way I have this hooked up here is, this is my system. I already explained what each one of those cartridges are. But this is my water in. So my water in gets separated here. Goes over to this switch so I can turn it on and off. It's off right now. I never leave it on. I don't want to pressurize the system when I'm not using it. That's to prevent leaks, and also to prevent it from keeping it pressurized. Maybe that could be bad, maybe it could be good. I have no idea. Leave a comment if you know if it's good to leave the system pressurized or to depressurize it when you're done, because I'm unsure. But you will see a number of these on-off switches throughout my setup here. So we will follow it. So again, water in, past the switch, that's the main switch. Here's the first TDS in measurement. Right here, we can push this on. It's going to be really high right now because the water's not flowing. But there's my TDS. In and out. So the out is higher right now, which we'll get back to that because I'm going to mention that. And I also want you to leave comments about that when we get to it. But I also have a second one here. Here's the in, there's the out. So we follow the water. Here's the first in. So this should be measuring the pure just water, just the TDS of my tap water basically is what this in is measuring. Then this in goes to the sediment filter, overflows to this carbon block, overflows through this carbon block, gets pushed up through here. This splitter only splits it to measure the pressure here. And the reason I want a pressure gauge here is because these reverse osmosis filters are most efficient when you're above 60 psi. So if you're not above 60 psi, you might want to think about getting a booster pump. I'm about 65, so I'm happy with where I am. But that's the only reason for the splitter. Then it comes up here. Oh, here's the second splitter. That's for the out. So basically this TDS meter is measuring the tap water in and the water after it goes through these three filters, the sediment filter and the two carbon blocks. It gets measured again. So the in is going to be the reading of my tap water. The out is going to be the reading of after these three. And that's why I was mentioning, why is it higher? You would think the output would be lower, right? But we'll get back to that. So after it goes out of there, we get measured. So that's the first two measurements on this. So this one's done. There's only 2 measurements per meter on these. There are meters that measure more, but I only have the dual. So it goes up, and then from there it goes through my reverse osmosis membranes. And since this is the water saver unit, it pushes the water through, and all the good water gets separated out through this blue tube and gets pushed onto the good water. All the bad water, which if you don't know about reverse osmosis systems, it's powered by pressure, water pressure. So it actually uses water pressure to create the good water and push it through that membrane filter. It uses the water pressure to push it through. And all the water that's used as pressure is basically waste. It wastes a lot of water, which is horrible. But this water saver unit saves 50% of it by taking this black line right here is actually the discharge tube that most units would just, this would be your wastewater straight out. But instead of wasting this water for pressure, it's connected again into another reverse osmosis membrane. So the pressure is used twice to push it through 2 membranes versus 1 membrane. So basically you're getting, and this blue line is my other water. That's why they're tied together here. Both the good waters are coming out. And it's very helpful to use colored lines like this so you know what is what. Black is waste, red is in, blue is good, out. That's how it's working. So basically the water pressure from this, the one line is fueling 2 membranes instead of 1, so you're getting double the pressure. So I'm getting 150 gallons per day out of this, and you'll notice that the 4-stage systems from bulk resupply get 75 gallons a day, and that's the only difference in the systems is this one of these extra RO membranes, and you help the environment by saving water, even though if saving water is kind of iffy because it goes down the drain, it evaporates, and it gets recycled. So you really can't waste water unless you send it into space. I guess on a physics standpoint, you're wasting money by cleaning the water is what you're wasting. You're not actually wasting the water. You're wasting tax money, I guess. All right, but anyways, that was a little tangent. Basically once it leaves these RO membranes, it goes into this blue tube, gets separated over here, and now we have another input reading. And the input reading is this TDS meter in. And then it gets split off to this switch which turns on and off, and it's just a drain to here, which I use to fill my reverse osmosis drinking water, because as you can see it's split off before the DI resin. You do not want to drink water that came from DI resin. You also do not want to drink pure reverse osmosis water. So the water that comes out of this tube either goes down the drain or it goes into a 5-gallon water jug thingy that I remineralize and I use as drinking water. So I remineralize it with trace concentrate elements before I drink it again. But basically, this drains it down the drain before the DI, or it gets pushed into the DI. And once it goes into the DI, there's an output here, which is the main out, which should always be 0. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Oh, if you're wondering about this, this goes up to my fridge, and it's split off just the normal water line before it goes through any. Oh, this is here. Let's see, this kind of old faucet. I'm going to replace it. It's on the list. So next time you see the sink, hopefully that'll be replaced. But basically, my fridge gets split off before any of this. I used to have the RO water go up to the fridge, but I felt like it put too much pressure on the RO system, always making the ice cube, and that was just for the ice cubes because I didn't want to drink the water because it wouldn't have been remineralized. So basically, it was too much of a pain in the butt just for RO ice cubes. I'll deal with whatever contaminants come into my tap water for my ice. At least it's not full drinking, whatever. Anyway, let's get on with this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn on my system. And what I do first, I'm going to go through my whole process of when I want to make water. And I need to make water right now because I just filled up this tank. This is a Neo parameter tank with Eco Complete, and I just filled it up. The float valve filled it automatically from my RO storage, which is what I'm about to fill up. And then I added salty shrimp. There's probably a little bit left. Yep, you can see salty shrimp remnants that hasn't dissolved yet. They will dissolve by morning. Yes, salty shrimp takes a while to dissolve, but it's good. I like it. I also filled these 2 tanks today for Caridina. They have Brightwell Aqua Soil. So they're filling. If you're wondering what that is a barley bit from Shrimp Haven. I throw them in there just to condition the water and get the microorganisms going. And as you can see, this is why I love Brightwell soil. I already have some Black King Kong Shadow Pandas in this tank. And this tank has been filled for probably about 22 hours. It was filled before that with Neos, but so all the algae on this wall was from when it was a Neo tank yesterday. And then I decided these 2 needed to be converted from Neo tanks to Caridina tanks. And probably just about 24 hours later, they are Caridina tanks. Seeded filters, of course, so the bacteria is built up. But that's why I love Brightwell soil, because there's not that huge break-in period. Literally 1 day later. And I guarantee these shrimpies will be fine, or else I would not have risked my shadow pandas in here already. But anyway, back to here. Let's start it off. So what I do is I open this up to release. Oh, it was already open, to release pressure into the sink. Open this up, which I believe is already open, to release pressure into the sink, because I generally make a habit of opening these back up when I'm done, so then I can just restart. Make sure this one's closed, which goes up to my RO storage. I don't want anything getting up there yet, because this video is about TDS Creep, and I don't want any of that TDS water reaching through the DI at all. And so honestly, this should probably be closed. But I've noticed that the system won't turn on unless one of the outputs, the end output, is open. So you'll probably see that right now. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Turn it on. Meter input. And as you can see, we actually have some output going down the drain here. So we are draining. We look at the TDS meter. It puts at 24, and that will keep dropping. You notice it'll drop because the TDS in the lines, as you let it sit, the TDS grows. Up, it just creeped up. Up, it's making me a liar. It's going up. You know, it might just creep up. It's pushing all that water that was in that line through it, and then it'll start seeking back down. It's probably going to drop back down to about 100 by the time I'm done flushing the system, is what I'm calling it. So it's dropping down. I'm going to switch it to out. See, the output's higher. And that's basically because the water that's getting pushed through there is the water that's been sitting in here. And you want to flush all the water that's been sitting in here. Because then that's where the extra TDS comes from. So as you can see, the out's actually growing as the in shrinks. Which is weird because, right, the output after 3 filters you would think would be lower, right? So this is the stuff you need to observe and pay attention to, because you could be putting this high TDS stuff out through your resin and just using your resin for no reason. So basically what we're doing is we're draining all this high TDS water down the drain first as we're flushing out these membranes and flushing out these filters and letting the inputs down to 109. And if you notice the output is creeping up, and that's because all the crap that was left in here from the last time I made water slowly dissolved back into the water that was left in here, and that's what's getting spit out as good water, because there's no like software or anything that says, hey, don't use any of that stuff. The water was clean and then it redissolved. It's mechanical. So you actually have to run it mechanically through until you see the numbers make sense. So as you can see, my input is at about 105, which is, it might get down to about 99, but this is about where it's going to hover for my tap water in my experience. 124 is still the output. It's still 20 above, but as you can see, it's dropping. And we just have to wait for it to filter this water out and equalize and get down till these two numbers match. And that's the first stage of TDS creep. You need to get this output number below the input, otherwise what the hell is the point of these 3 filters? If they're adding TDS, why do you need them? Seems like a bad negative effect to me. So we want to make sure our in is higher than our out, and see how it's coming down. But anyways, to speed up the video, I'm going to start it a little bit sooner because this could take another 10 minutes before it actually gets lower. It usually doesn't, but it could. As you can see, it's only 15 away right now, 14 away right now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to close this discharge valve that's wasting the water, which will tell it to go through my RO membranes, and I'm going to open up. So I'm going to open up this, so now water's coming through here. That's water getting pushed through the membranes. So now the input on this TDS meter, that's what we're seeing there. So we're seeing 25, 27, 29. It's crawling up. I'm going to close this off, which pressurizes it for reals, and now we're actually really making water. And as you can see, the TDS here is going to go up and up and up and up and up, and that's TDS creep. That's what this video is about. So the water, the bad water in here is still getting pushed through these tubes from the last time we made water, and we don't want to put that high TDS through our resin. That would kill it. That really would use it up way faster than it needed to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this water, even though it's been run through our RO membranes, this is the in measuring it right there, we're going to let that run out into the sink and just go down the drain, because we don't want to run that high TDS water through our resin. And you see how fast it leaves. So this is going to get down and down and down. And normally I wait for this to get to about 3 or 2 through the RO before the DI. I wait till it gets to about 2. And then I will close this which closes this runoff waste, and I will open this, which runs to my storage. I don't want to open this until I see a little one. I mean, I can switch it to the out, which is 0. So it's always 0, but if you run that 40, 30, 20 TDS water through this resin, it's going to eat it up a hell of a lot faster, well, 10 times fast. Running 20 TDS water through this is going to eat it up 10 times faster than running this 2 TDS water through this. So now that I see this is 2, I can go ahead, close this off, open this up, and now we can see, I'll switch this over to out. I'll put 0, but we weren't, it would have always been 0, but it would have been eaten away at that resin versus 2 TDS going in versus 20 TDS going in. And we've seen that took about, how long did that take to clear the system out? So it's not only a couple seconds of high TDS that'd be running through your resin, it's actually a good few minutes of high TDS water that would be going through your system. And really eating up that resin a lot quicker than it needs to be. Hope this video was entertaining and educational. Hope you learned from it. And I hope you can save some money on this DI resin in the future. I used mixed bed for all of you that's curious. That all has the cation and anion for the positive and negative ions absorptions. Later I'll